We're good?
Are we doing pictures? Oh yeah, pictures, yeah. Yeah, let's see the pictures.
I love you. Please get out of the way.
Steve was also a teacher. He also taught in schools.
We'll talk more about that for sure, because Eric, he's not getting up with the village. More of an ad. And we kids, you would be surprised. There's some more I don't think. I'll make sure that
Steve puts on his truck because the chair on his truck is heavy lifting.
And seriously, the kids. All right, so hey,
We can stay down here.
let's go.
In this case, they need me to do somebody. So yeah, I've just been Mealy has the other camera. Can I give you your keys? I hand them with me. Yeah, they're in your pocket. See, you gave it to me. That's what I said. Don't make fun of me. I'll freak it out there for a minute.
All right. This is our photography.
Great job, though. I know that just did
I'll let you do that background. Sure. About ready?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'll keep them down here. Don't get a better chance to see the assembly.
Oh, that's when you
No, you guys can just see. You guys feel more people feel the same. It's not.
Okay, everybody, welcome and thank you. Today is our third veteran presentation today, and as you guys know, we're in the middle of our veteran project and gift, and at the end of our holiday assembly, we're going to honor some veterans with a gift. And we are lucky to have some special veterans here with us today. This year, we're honoring heroes, helping heroes, celebrating courage. All right, so we heard from Creative Vets and from Project Headspace and Timing, and we're also lucky to have with us today One Pet, One Vet. It's a special organization, and one of the founders, Eric Carlson, is here with his friends, and I'm going to let him tell the rest of the story. That said, warm welcome.
Thanks, Jim. Afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having us here. I'll give you a little bit of background about One Pet, One Vet. It started about 7 years ago. It was just a group of veterans that came home, and some of them had some transitional issues. So we started talking about stuff, and we realized that there was a common denominator that we all had. We all had dogs, and we all realized the difference that the dogs made in our lives, how they made us feel better. Now, Jim has told me that you guys have a comfort dog here in school. You guys have one that stays there? There's a difference now between comfort dogs. Comfort dogs are trained to help groups of people. So they can help in a therapeutic way. There's been scientific studies shown that just by petting a dog slowly, what it does is it releases oxytocin in you and the dog, so which is a bonding hormone. So that can serve to calm you down, which is I know a lot of, even colleges use them during test time. They bring them in for students to help calm students down, that anxiety and that stuff. What we do is we deal with service dogs. Now the difference between a service dog and a comfort dog is a service dog is medically necessary. So basically it's a walking prescription. This means a doctor has said that this patient has a condition that needs some type of medical help. Now that can be, a lot of people are used to seeing maybe a seeing eye dog. That's a service dog also. A stability dog for someone who may have an injury or maybe missing a limb. Our dogs that we deal with specifically are for post-traumatic stress. Now, if you guys, are you familiar with the term post-traumatic stress? We deal with primarily military post-traumatic stress, but anybody can get post-traumatic stress. It can happen to anybody at any time in their life, any walk of life. The good thing about it is that PTSD is treatable. And by treatable, I mean that there's a lot of different treatment protocols, there's medications they can take, but there's also, what we like to do is, you want to get the person that's experienced this trauma, you want to get them to stop reliving this trauma. So if you can picture in your brain, you have things that are called neural pathways. These neurons fire in your head, and especially when you have things that you think about. If you think about something over and over again, picture wagon ruts. The more times the wagon goes over this road, the deeper those ruts are going to get. And eventually you're going to keep falling back into those ruts and keep going down that bad path, thinking about those negative things. If you can get out of that wagon rut and get down a better trail, you're going to be better off. So what we do in our program, and there's a lot of programs out there, the last speaker here, Eric Peterson, he's got programs that he does. It can be either through music, through art therapy. There's a lot of different things you can do, but what we want you to do is get away from thinking about those negative events that happened in the past. Now, we do it through dogs. Our service dog program, our veterans come to us, and we're a little bit different than most of the service dog training organizations. Most of them, what they will do is they'll put a veteran on a waiting list, they'll take a dog, they'll train that dog for a year and a half, then they'll bring the veteran to them, maybe from outside the state, maybe from the other side of the country. They'll pair him up with this dog, they'll give him about 2 or 3 weeks of intensive training with that dog, and then they get back on a plane and they go back home. Our way is a little different in the fact that what we do is our veterans come within a 50-mile radius of where we train in Manteno, Illinois, down in the south suburbs. The way we do it is the veteran comes to us, they enter our program after being vetted, and we make sure that our program is right for them both ways, that we're right fit for them and they're right for us. When they come into the program, they commit to a year and a half to 2 years. So this is basically like getting a college degree, an associate's degree when they come to us. There's a lot more than dog training that goes into it. We teach them different things about learning theory and different methods to use to help combat their post-traumatic stress and some of the symptoms that might come up. And we do this through the dogs. The dogs are kind of the conduit that allows us to get this done. And when the veterans come into the program, when I told you about getting out of those ruts, it's about the dog becomes their project. They train these dogs with us under our tutelage, but the dogs remain with them their entire year and a half time, during that year and a half time span. So the veterans, this becomes their project. So this becomes their new way of thinking about things. How many people in here have dogs? A lot of people? Okay, have you ever had a bad day at school or maybe something wasn't going right and you come home from school and you're feeling kind of stressed out and your dog comes up and kind of jumps on your lap? Anybody ever had that happen? Dog gets up on you and you just kind of feel better and you just, for a second, you forget about everything and you start petting that dog. These things have been scientifically proven for a while there, and we're still waiting for the Veterans Administration to come through and actually start funding service dogs. Currently, they do not. So programs like ours and other small organizations like that, we rely solely on donations. So we do this all on a volunteer basis from our staff side, and then all through funding from people. But getting back to the VA, the reason this is in the early stages for them of actually the scientific proof. So as more and more studies get done, the VA is actually starting to look at this and saying, yes, dogs, it's not just a placebo. It doesn't just make somebody feel good because the dog's wagging his tail. There's a scientific method behind it that shows that these dogs release certain chemicals in our body that actually make us feel better. And the dogs themselves, these dogs here, are you guys aware that when you're out in public, if you see a dog out in public, a working dog, if it's a service dog, even if it has a vest on or not, because service dogs aren't required to have a vest on. It's by law, they don't have to wear the service dog vest. But if you see a dog out someplace where you normally wouldn't see a dog, just assume that dog's working, and the best course of action is to ignore that dog. Because like these dogs here, they have to be focused on their handler. So if people come up and start petting the dog or getting in the dog's face or distracting that dog, that might cause anxiety to the veteran, the handler who has that dog. And by you distracting the dog won't be able to pick up on certain signals that that veteran's giving off. That dog may need to ground that veteran or actually remove that veteran from that scenario at that time. Take them back out to their car or maybe out into the lobby where they can take a breath and just relax. So the best course of action with service dogs, anytime you see them out in public, is to just ignore them. They're just working. Just like you wouldn't bug someone if you saw an electrician here at school up on the ladder changing one of these bulbs up here. You wouldn't come up and shake the ladder and say how it's going. You know, he's busy doing his job. It can be dangerous. Certain dogs, if it's a diabetic alert dog that's out there, these dogs need to be able to pay attention to their handler uninterrupted, because they can miss a signal, and that signal can cause a catastrophic event, possibly down the road. I brought two of our veterans and dogs with us today. This is Steve. Steve was a corpsman in the Navy. If anybody's unfamiliar with that role, they're basically the medics. What an Army medic would be in a line platoon, the Navy has corpsmen. They go out with Marine infantry platoons. So Steve was with a Marine infantry platoon as a medic in Vietnam. Sitting behind him is Ben. Ben was a paratrooper in the infantry in the 82nd Airborne. He was in the Dominican Republic in 1965. You may not be aware of what was going on there. And then after the Dominican Republic, he deployed to Vietnam with the 82nd Airborne. These two veterans here just graduated last week with their dogs. The dogs down here are Elsa and Daisy. They came to our program about 2 years ago. They are sisters. I know you're trying to get a look at them. The best thing, like I said, you guys will be able to see them in the assembly and everything, but again, we just ask that you please ignore the dogs because they are working. A lot of times people look and say, well, they don't look like they're doing much. They are doing it. You see how their handlers are relaxed and calm? Dogs use what's called social modeling. By social modeling, if you show that you're in a relaxed state and that you're okay, those dogs are going to relax. Now you see Ben and Steve are relaxed. They're in this, they know they're in a safe environment here. They know they're with some people that they know. They know the kids in here are good kids. Nothing for them to get upset about. So those dogs are modeling just that. Hey, we can lay down, we can take a nap now. If these guys were anxious for some reason, if this setting caused them any type of anxiety or anything, those dogs would not be laying down like that. Those dogs would be up, standing next to them. If it got to a point where the dog needed a room, the dog would nose them and actually tell them, hey, you need to, basically it's just them checking you, saying, hey, you need to check on yourself. You need to look inside right now and see where you're at. Do we need to walk out of here at this point? So that's what these dogs are trained to do. One of their big tasks, like I said, is grounding. So that can come up in tactile pressure. The dogs can come and lay across the veteran's lap and dig their elbows into the legs. That tactile pressure is going to cause you to have focus right in front of you. Instead of the things that are upsetting you out here, those dogs are going to force you to focus on them. Now, a lot of the younger veterans, we have veterans from all eras in our program. The younger veterans come home, and the hardest thing for them is a lot of these guys come home and they did one tour in the military, so they did 3 or 4 years. So they might be 20, 21 years old, 22 at tops. They come home and they lose that structure, and they kind of lose that having their friends and stuff. And this is something you guys are probably able to relate to in high school. You know a lot of people, your classmates and everything, but you have that tight group, that tight clique of friends, and you might only have 1 or 2. But you'll keep those friends probably for the rest of your life. You'll have those friends. You might not stay in contact all the time, but you'll always have them. 30 or 40 years from now, you'll still be calling the same people that you have here. It's the same thing in the military, except the bond created is a lot tighter. So when some of the young guys come home and they get out of service, they miss that bond. And because they don't have families, they're young, they haven't married yet and stuff, they might go out and they get their own apartment. So they're living on their own, they're 21, 22 years old, and if they have post-traumatic stress, that can hit them when they're on their own, and it's easy for them to isolate and what we call self-medicate, which can lead to alcoholism and drug use. That's the last thing we want to do. But unfortunately, that happens a lot because a lot of the veterans, the way society is set up now, a very small percentage of the population actually send their kids into the military. So you have a lot of veterans come home and they feel that most people don't understand them, don't understand what they've been through, don't understand where they're coming from. So that rather than talk to people about it, they tend to self-isolate. That can lead them down a rabbit hole to bad things. I'm sure, I don't know if a lot of you have heard about the veteran suicide rate. The number that's often been used is 22 a day. 22 veterans a day commit suicide. That number, according to the VA, is now down to 20 a day, which is still far too many. But that number is, it's almost 8,000 veterans a year commit suicide. To balance that out, you look at Afghanistan. We've been in Afghanistan for 19 years, and we haven't had that many deaths in combat in that 19 years. So just to put things in perspective. And unfortunately, the largest group of veterans that are taking their own lives are Vietnam veterans. The reason for that, in my opinion, is that there was no such thing as post-traumatic stress disorder. It didn't even come around. They didn't even have a diagnosis until the mid-1980s. So you had veterans that came home in the late 60s, early 70s that dealt with this until this time without having that backing, without having that help, the support system that they have now. So a lot of these veterans have dealt with this stuff, some of them for 50 years. And after a while, this burden, this thing that just keeps crushing you, keeps you down, after a while it just becomes too much. And that's part of the reason why we started this. Because we knew there were veterans, young and the older generations, that were going through this stuff. We could see that as veterans, so we just wanted to try and help them. So we had this idea with the dogs. We got them together. We started working with dogs and basically just giving shelter animals to veterans as pets to try and help them out because we knew how the dogs had helped us. As we went on, we brought a new trainer on about 4 years ago. Her name's Peggy Moran. Best trainer you're going to ever find anywhere. When we brought Peggy on, she said, we understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to save shelter animals, and you're trying to help veterans. You need to focus on one or the other. You can't take a shelter dog because you don't know that dog's history. Dogs get post-traumatic stress just like people do, believe it or not. These dogs are not, we do not treat them as objects, okay? These dogs are, when we graduate a service dog team, it is just that, it's a team. Some days, the dogs don't feel good. Some days they don't feel like going to work, just like a lot of us don't. You don't feel like going to school. They have those off days. It's up to their team members to help pick them up. So when we see this happen, like Steve and Ben can tell you, these dogs, and with the younger veterans, it causes them to get up and to have to get out of bed. So if you find yourself self-isolating in an apartment somewhere, and one day turns into 2, and 2 turns into 5, and next thing, you haven't been out of your house in 2 weeks. You haven't even lifted the shades up to see the sunlight. If you have a dog there, at worst, that dog is there at 6 in the morning looking you in the face, licking your face saying, hey, I gotta go outside, dude. I understand you don't feel good, but we still gotta go. Just to get you up and get you out that door. And it's called crossing a barrier. If you can cross that barrier and get out, there's a reset to your mind. You'll see these dogs when they get up, and I'm sure you've seen it at home if you have dogs. A dog will get up after they do a certain thing. If they play with you, they'll shake. They'll shake. Does anybody know why they do that? It's a reset. It's a reset for them. It's like, okay, we just did that thing. Okay, we're on to the next thing. It's the same thing for a person going through a door. If you feel really bad and everything, don't you feel, if you've had a stressful day here at school, when you walk out that door to go home and the sun hits you, if it's a nice day out, sun hits you and everything, you're like, or even if it's cold out, that crisp air hits you and you're just like, okay, something's different, It changes your mindset. And that's what we try and do with these dogs. These dogs can be the barrier for the person to get them going. And it's also, like I say, when these guys, I get a little wrapped up in the dogs because that's, that was one of the things that helped me out a lot was my dog. And she's not a service dog, but she does a lot of the same tasks. She was a shelter dog. I say that shelter dogs don't make the best service dogs. They can. Any dog can become a service dog. But the thing with the shelter dogs is you're not sure. You're not sure what that dog went through before. So that dog could have had a traumatic experience when it was young that you don't know about. You train your dog, you put 2 years of work into it. You go out, and we actually had a girl, one of our female veterans came in, and she had gone to another organization and they rescued a pit bull, and they put her through 1.5 years of training, and she was just about ready to graduate. She was out in public with her pit bull, and someone came up with a Chihuahua, and the Chihuahua was letting them antagonize the pit bull, and that pit bull went after that Chihuahua and tore it up. So that dog had to be retired as a service dog. The traumatic event of her actually seeing that dog go after another dog, if you've ever seen a dog fight, they can be very traumatic. And she had lost everything that she had invested, a year and a half of training in her heart. She loved this dog. And now this dog can no longer be a service dog and had to be retired. So she came to us and she was very broken up and she wasn't sure if she wanted to go through the program and everything. When we showed her a different way of doing things and a different way of looking at it, she's doing really well. She's got a chocolate lab right now named George. He's a big, goofy baby. But she's, you know, it's all about the right dog for the right job. And certain dogs, they've been bred over time to have certain characteristics. The dogs that we use are primarily golden retrievers, Labrador retrievers, and standard poodles. Actually, standard poodles, because they're so intelligent, they make very good service dogs. Now, a lot of guys, a lot of rugged guys like Steve here might not look at a standard poodle as something that he wants to be walking around with, but we do have them in the program, and they do work quite well. So, do you guys have any questions about service dogs or anything? Anything we can answer? Help you guys out? No questions. Outstanding. Do you anything you want to say, Steve or Ben, about the program or anything?
For me, the program has changed my whole attitude. I didn't want to be around people. I just kept to myself most of the time. And I had another dog, Noah, who was my first service dog. And these people accepted him, and we went through a program with him. And I still have him. He's at home. He's retired. He's got his feet up. Now, when I do take him out and leave her alone, she'll sit by the back door and cry. Noah just roll over. He doesn't care. He's got it made now. But it's made a world of difference to me. I'm not afraid to talk in front of you people. None of you scare me, and I just love it. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, so like I said, our organization is a small organization, and I know I spoke with Eric's been at another event that we were at Kankakee Community College, and the thing that I like to get across to people is there are a lot of small veteran-run charity organizations out there that are specifically helping other veterans. So we're kind of looking after ourselves in that fact, just like we did when we were in the service. And that's a big deal to us. But we can't do it without support from the outside, too. There's just not enough of us to get the things done that we need to get done. So which is why we ask, I've taught Jim here about his program with the tiny houses. I know you guys are working on that stuff. That's outstanding. Anything you can do, I tell people constantly, just pick one charity. I mean, there's a ton of them out there, and don't get like a shotgun scattered all over the place. Just pick one thing that is really near and dear to you, and go ahead and support that and help them out. And that's all I would ask you guys today. And we appreciate you guys having us out here. And like I said, just ignore the dogs. You can take a look at them, but check us out on the website, and you can get a little more insight into what we do. Thanks again.
Good question for you.
Yep.
If these guys have been working on and learning about transitional tiny home communities and various levels of different classes and things, and some of them next semester are going to be working on building some of the tiny homes and learning even more. And Eric Peterson referred to Racine, the Veterans Village there that's up and operating. They have several dogs on site. Eric, have you seen the dogs? I think, what do they have? A pit bull and a little dog?
I think they have a chocolate lab and either a bull or a
Are they comfort dogs? Are they for the community? Yeah, and those are great things. You see, these dogs here are actually, we choose our dogs from known bloodlines. These dogs were chosen by the same people who put out the dogs for Lutheran Charities. I don't know if you've heard of Lutheran Charities. They're huge. They're nationwide. When it comes to comfort dogs, these are the dogs that were taken to Sandy Hook, that go to all these disaster areas. So these are the same bloodlines of those dogs. So temperament is a big part of it. But when you have a dog that can come in and make a difference for people, if you just walk by in the morning and just touch that dog, that might change your day. That might change your outlook going into that first class, what can change your entire outlook on the day. So they're very important. The difference between, like I said, comfort dogs and service dogs is service dogs are medically necessary. These are walking prescriptions. A doctor actually signed a letter saying that these dogs are needed, and they have to, by law, they have to have a minimum of 2 medically necessary tasks in order to graduate. These dogs are upwards. We try and get at least 3 medically necessary tasks. Those can be such things as retrieve my medicine, grounding, as we talked about before. Another thing is a lot of veterans talk about night terrors or bad dreams. We train the dogs, if the veteran has that issue and they'd like to have this dog trained to that, the dog can be trained to wake the veteran up at night. Now, some people don't like to be touched at night. That can cause a violent reaction with a physical touch. So we can teach the dogs to remove blankets, to turn on a light, to ring a bell. There's several things that they can do to help wake that veteran up, to help prevent those night terrors. So, are there any more questions?
Is it possible for a veteran in a tiny home to have a service dog room?
I don't see why not. What's your square footage looking roughly?
That's part of the question.
I mean, I know we see like the dogs are like on the property,
Yeah.
and they just kind of comfort all the vets. They
Yeah.
don't necessarily spend all the time in one of the homes because the homes are about 120 square feet.
So it basically, I mean, like my dog sleeps in my bed. So in a bedroom that size, no problem, because you're going out. The dogs, when it's an actual service dog, the dog is with you constantly. The dog is with you all day. If you can, I mean, the dog really doesn't care if the dog's getting his exercise and going out and doing his stuff, because you're not going to spend all day in that house. You're out doing stuff, going to the store, going to. Do you guys have a day room area set up, stuff like that? So that's it. That's all I've got. Thank you for having us.
Warm, thank you.